All right, guys, welcome back. And this is going to be a real short video discussing the real world applications of confidence intervals. And while there are many, I wanted to expose you all to just one specifically. We're going to look at this one. It's going to help you solve number 11 and number 13, specifically your explanation. You're finding the confidence interval will be the same, but this will kind of help you with part C in 11 and 13. And one way we see confidence intervals in the real world is we see them in articles. While you may never go into stats specifically or a direct stats related field like insurance, what you might end up doing is maybe you go into a science field and you read research reports, or even if you're just reading an article, I want you to see where confidence intervals are present in your daily life. So here's an excerpt from, I believe it was the New York Times, but don't quote me on that. And so let's check it out. The Wall Street Journal / NBC News poll was based on nationwide telephone interviews of 1,508 adults conducted last Friday through Tuesday by the polling organizations of Peter Hart and Robert Teeter. The sample was drawn from 315 randomly selected geographic points in the continental United States. Each region was represented in proportion to its population. Households were selected by a method that gave all telephone numbers an equal chance of being included. One adult, 18 years or older, was selected from each household by a procedure to provide the correct number of male and female respondents. Chances are 19 out of 20 that if all adults with telephones in the U.S. had been surveyed, the findings would differ from these poll results by no more than 2.6 percentage points in either direction. Again, my goal in breaking this down for you is that you can see where we may see stats in the real world. What we can see here is we don't have the topic of the survey. We didn't read the whole article. We just read the end of it. Is that they're estimating some population proportion, okay? And they don't know that population proportion or percentage or probability. So they're going to find an estimate using a sample. That sample size would be 1,508 adults. They can't survey everyone in the U.S., as we've talked about, so they look at a sample. The next couple paragraphs actually go back to a chapter 1 idea. Sample was drawn from 315 randomly selected geographic points, and they go on. And essentially what the second paragraph is establishing is that these 1,508 sample people were not biased toward one way or another, right? We're making sure if we want to represent all of the U.S., well, the U.S. is a diverse group of people. And so we got to make sure all groups of people are represented. Otherwise, it could bias our survey or our study, our sample results. And so they go on, but I want to focus mostly on the last paragraph because that has to really do with what we're talking with. Look at what they say here. Chances are 19 out of 20. Now, if you have a calculator and you do 19 divided by 20, you're going to find that that's 95%. Well, that looks familiar. That if all adults with telephones in the U.S., hey, that's the group we pulled our 1,508 people in the sample from, so that's our population. So we see 95%, and looking at a population looks more and more familiar, have been surveyed. The findings would differ from these poll results being our sample, would differ from these poll results by no more than 2.6 percentage points in either direction. Folks, if you don't recognize it yet, this is a real world example in a news article of a confidence interval. They word it a little differently, right? What we would say is we are 95% confident. Maybe we wouldn't say chances are 19 out of 20. We're 95% confident. And then instead of saying differing by no more than 2.6 percentage points, we would physically give the interval, right? We would take that 2.6 number and add and subtract it to our sample proportion. So chances, we would say there's a 95% level of confidence that our interval, and then we list the interval, contains the true population proportion of all adults with telephones in the US. Okay, and then we would make sure in that explanation we include what we're studying. So that's our population, but we're looking at some specific question we asked them or whatnot. Whereas here we see it worded a little bit differently. Instead of saying 95% confidence, they word it chances are 19 out of 20. They identify their population if all adults with telephone in the US had been surveyed. Again, we don't know that survey topic. The findings would differ from these results by no more than 2.6 percentage points. This is our margin of error. This is the value that we subtract and add to p hat, which again, we don't know in this case. And so what we're looking at here is, while this is worded differently, this is a confidence interval in action. So the point you need to walk away with, in reporting, your confidence intervals may not always appear like we have been writing them in our statistics manner, but they are still present. In reporting, sometimes instead of saying we are 95% confident that our interval, then list the interval, contains the true population proportion, and then give some context to it, reporting sometimes what they're going to do is they might list the sample proportion and then say the population results will differ by no more than 2.6 percentage points, or differ by the margin of error, whatever your margin of error would be. Ours is 2.6 here. Okay, so what I would want you to do is just, again, I want you to see a real world example and how we can recognize a confidence interval in the real world context of reporting. Now, what I want you to do is, as you solve 11C and 13C, you're probably going to see that they're going to ask you how a reporter would report the results. Okay, we want it to be something like this, a little bit different than maybe the way our Part B, our direct stats interpretation would be. But if you struggle on this, go ahead and check my answer for the key on 11C, and that should give you some guidance, and then try it on your own in 13C. As always, let me know if you have any questions.